Many of you know both presenters at today's meeting. Dan Schrantz has spent his entire adult life serving the village of Brockton and the town of Portland. For the past 26 years, Dan has been employed with the Village of Brockton wastewater treatment facility. He's been a 41-year member of the Brockton Fire Department. He is also the current chairman of the Chadwick Bay Regional Development Organization, which is now understood and now called the North County Water District. Our second presenter is a youngster, really, to public service. Dunkirk Mayor Anthony Dolce is approaching only 12 years in public office. 4 as mayor, and previously as First Ward Councilman from 2003 to 2009, and Councilman at Large from 2010 to 2012. During his time on council, Dolce served on the Public Finance Committee and as chair of Public Safety. Prior to serving in public office, Mr. Dolce taught for 10 years at Northern Chautauqua Catholic School in Dunkirk, then Purcell Middle School in Jamestown, and finally at Cassadaga Job Corps. He earned his BA, I'm proud to say, in English from SUNY Fredonia in 2001 and has completed his master's degree in 2011. AJ and his wife, Jordan, are the parents of 3 beautiful little boys, Anthony, Evan, and little Louie. I'm pleased to bring both of these dedicated public officials to our program today. You will come away with more information about the challenge of this initiative. In addition to Dan and EJ, we have the Mayor of Brockton, Dave Hazelton, and Steve Keefe, Mayor of Fredonia, who might also be able to answer questions after the presentation that might be specifically related to their communities.
Thank you for inviting me to come here today. I was digging through my files to see what I might present today, and I'd like to start out with an article I found out of a water magazine, and it's on the infrastructure of the whole country. I'm just going to read a small phrase out of it. Our essential water infrastructure is failing and woefully inadequate to address the new normal weather patterns. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave the nation's drinking and wastewater infrastructure a D- grade. Broken and leaking pipes causes a loss of nearly 2 trillion gallons of drinking water per year at an annual cost of $2.6 billion. Restoring existing drinking water systems and expanding them to serve a growing population will cost at least $1 trillion over the next 25 years. At that current funding level, there is a funding gap of at least $224 billion nationwide over the next 20 years. Some argue that we can't afford this investment during a time of economic distress. And as Hurricane Sandy demonstrated, we cannot afford to neglect the infrastructure any longer. We must have reliable, resilient water infrastructure systems to attract and retain industry, businesses, and qualified workers, which are essential to any thriving community. The National Association of Utility Contractors estimate that for every $1 billion invested in the water infrastructure, 26,000 jobs are created. Water infrastructure investment is also critical to protect the public health and our quality of life, and it promotes innovative technologies that will help keep America competitive. I thought that was interesting to go over to another little article I found in my file. The Chautauqua Bay Regional Water Project. In 2008, County Executive Edwards requested his county health department to conduct a needs assessment in the public water system in northern Chautauqua County. The health department finding was each public system had critical infrastructure deficiencies with regard to supply, treatment, storage, or transmission. Some systems had all four deficiencies characteristics. In 2010, a study was conducted by Wendell Engineering examining each one of these public water supply systems. The study found by the participating communities substantiated the finding in 208 by the County Health Department assessment, and further concluded the cost to address each one of these individual water systems was significantly decreased when a regional water system was considered. At that time, one funding strategy which was being promoted is for each municipality to obtain loans and grants for the portion of the necessary regional system upgrade within their jurisdiction. At that conclusion of the process, which would take up to 10 to 12 years as public financing was available, the entire debt would be refinanced in one debt instrument under a newly created umbrella organization represented by each of the municipalities involved. Became circumstances warranted this project to be completed sooner than the original funding strategy allows. County Executive Edwards had offered to use the county's borrowing ability to bond for the necessary cost, estimated at that time at $35 to $38 million. This amount includes the cost of the city of Dunkirk has spent for their upgrades, subject to the approval of the county legislature as in all county borrowing. Additionally, County Executive has offered to be the lead applicant for the consolidated funding application. This process allowed the county to apply for 20% of the total cost, requiring the county portion to be the rest of the 80% local cost. I think AJ will update us on the most recent things, and then I have one more thing I would like to talk about.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking Mrs. Christina. I know you've told me a lot to call you Pat. I just can't. Obviously a teacher of mine and one who had a profound impact on my life. I did go and get my BA in English and a master's in such, and have taught for 10 years prior to becoming mayor, and I'm sure at some point I'll be back in the classroom. So yes, I'll start by talking about the length that this has been going on. The discussion of a North County Water District has taken place long before I took office. And I believe it's one that we're all striving towards, but you know, things in government and in life do move slowly. And the overall goal being to make sure that it is in the best interest of all parties involved in the process. To me, we're at that point, or almost at that point, where either this district happens or it doesn't, and we continue on in our current path and continue to operate independently, which I don't think is anything any of us want. I can speak more to the last 3 years. You know, that's been where my involvement has been. It has evolved from a Chadwick Bay group to now a North County Water Agency to reflect that, I would say, the addition of county legislators to the agency board formally, knowing that the legislator will eventually have to vote on bonding of this project. The most recent developments have definitely changed shape over time. Over the last 3 years, different plans and ideas have been presented. The most recent plan appears to be one in such where the city and village of Fredonia sell water at a district rate to the district, which would be the legal entity, which would then sell to each individual municipality. From there, the municipality would be responsible for the transport and billing to their respective communities. And previously, I'm sure those who have been paying attention to this, the last proposal was everybody pays the same rate. And I think we all realize that that wasn't quite going to work for everybody. And in that scenario, the district would sell to each municipality at the same rate, but then each municipality would have their own independent costs. I'm sorry, this is in the latest proposal. Such as transportation, upkeep, metering, billing, collection, etc. Dunkirk and Fredonia would stay out of the district and continue to operate independently and are responsible for our own bills. For the city, that means being responsible for approximately a $20 million consent order project that we've been under for some time, and we have started to pay back debt towards. To me, a couple turning points have really kept this going and kept us hopeful that this does get done. One, I would compliment the leadership of the new county executive, Mr. Horrigan. I think he's done a really good job of rallying the troops, if you will, and keeping everyone at the table and talking. Recently, Professor Renault from SUNY Fredonia has added his expertise to the number crunching, and I think has done a very good job as that. And the crux of the agreement that Fredonia does stay on and act as a supplier to the overall district. Financial impacts are still being worked out. I think they have been pretty well fine-tuned under Dr. Renault's work, but there still remains a lot of number crunching to do. And the specific details, to me, this is the crux of it all. The length, possible take or pay, these intermunicipal agreements is really the key to making this happen. Possible minimum volume purchased by the district, etc. All have an impact on the benefit of the plan to Dunkirk, Fredonia, and all municipalities involved. Also in this scenario, the county would bond, I believe that was mentioned, and Dunkirk and Fredonia would remain autonomous. Some successes that have happened recently, or I should say over the last couple of years, the consolidated funding applications have, through the state, have provided $2 million to this project. Dunkirk acted as the lead agency for the first one. Fredonia acted as the lead agency for the second one. So that is $2 million. That would be an overall benefit to the whole project. Next up, meeting tomorrow night, Chadwick Bay meeting. Those are always open to the public for anyone who'd like to hear firsthand. And there have been a lot of conversations taking place outside of the Chadwick Bay meetings, water agency meetings. They are separate groups, but obviously overlapping the discussion of water. But a lot of side conversations have been going on outside of the public ones, just trying to work through everybody's concerns. Interconnect had been part of those side conversations, strengthening that interconnect between the city and village to be able to provide water, better water, I should say, or as county executive would say, more robust water system to the whole county. And again, it all hinges on these intermunicipal agreements, making sure, in my opinion, making sure each municipality's needs are met through those agreements. Because let's face it, each municipality has a long history. I don't think I'm stepping out on a ledge here when I say the city of Dunkirk and village of Fredonia haven't always been on equal terms with each other over the years. But in this case, we are, and these intermunicipal agreements alleviate those trust concerns. You know, it's rock solid contract should work that through. End goal, why bother? You know, why work through all this? Well, there's potential economic benefits to having a I would say a two-plant system. And you gain stability by that, you know, if you're focused on a limited number of plants. It should help stabilize rates, which again lead to more economic benefits for developers, potential developers, and our homeowners, you know, our current rate payers. You know, we want to be able to stabilize those rates. You know, we've been able to keep taxes level the last 2 years in the city, but water rates continue to rise. And as our bonds come due for current improvements that we're under consent order to do, rates are going to keep going up. So it only benefits all parties to get this worked out. And I know there's been a lot of chatter about, you know, the city and the village, you know, only looking out for themselves and not really concerned about the district as a whole, the northern Chautauqua County community. And, you know, that couldn't be further from the truth. You know, I have a responsibility to look out for the best interests of my community. And, you know, each municipality has that responsibility. So we're simply going through and making sure, you know, as the county executive will say, nobody loses. You know, it's a win-win for everybody. And it has taken a great amount of time to get to this point. But as you can see by 4 of us being here, you know, we're at the table. We want to get this done, and that's what we're going to keep working towards. So, thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to follow up on sort of combining some of this stuff together. As chairman of Chautauqua Bay Regional Development Corporation, I'd like to state how important I feel as a regional system is to the area. I understand everyone's concerns and questions, but you have to remember, if a regional board was formed, they would be looking out as a group on how to deliver the water to the resident water customers and businesses in the most cost-effective, safe, reliable way and of good quality and quantity. This is a big step for the city of Dunkirk, but also for the current producers of water, including the village of Fredonia and village of Brockton. But without everyone coming together, the cost to do the necessary upgrades alone will drive the water rates higher for all water customers and businesses in all the communities. We all know how important the NRG plant was to the area and the amount of work and public meetings and input that everybody had to keep it here. I feel this is very similar. We need a regional water system to provide the necessary water at the most affordable cost for our current businesses and water customers, along with attracting new residents and businesses. If we don't, we know the impact we'll have if we lose more businesses and jobs because not having the ability to deliver the necessary water at a stable price would be crucial to the area. Like AJ said, as supervisor for the town of Portland, I feel our town board has the responsibility to look for the most cost-effective way to bring water into our community, be it from the village of Brockton, village of Fredonia, city of Dunkirk, or elsewhere. If you look at it from a business view, you would be looking at, how do I keep the costs down? How do I expand my customer base? And the regional system is definitely the most cost-effective way to go. I realize, again, there's a lot of concerns and questions out there, and we look hard to proceeding forward with this North County regional water system. By letting the county be the lead applicant to submit the grant application to the New York State Consolidating Fund application of Western New York Regional Economic Development Council, we took a step forward and have secured the $2 million in grant funding along with the good bonding rate we would get from the county to make this project happen. We have an engineering firm on board, Clark Patterson Lee, to look at what is the best way to move this project forward. They will look at anything that anyone feels is important or should be looked at to move this regional project to the next step. They've spent a lot of time going to each community, taking their budgets to find out exactly what the water rate is costing each resident. Everybody has a lot of different ways of billing, so they took the total budget of the water and broke it down to make it the same for every community. So that's how they came up with the water rate of what everybody's currently paying. We need a committee to work together with the intermunicipal agreements and the preparation of the map plan and report to move forward. What is the benefit of a regional system? Number one, to reduce the capital costs related to all the upgrades to the Dunkirk and Fredonia water plants and eliminating the Brockton plant. The entire region will share the cost equally for the current investments and future investments in the water treatment and transmission system. Number three, provide dependable, affordable water services with updated infrastructure to residents and businesses so they can benefit from safe drinking water and fire protection at the most reasonable rates. Number four, the district will be overseen by a group that has the interests of the entire region in mind. Number five, regionalism is viewed favorable by state and federal governments, creating more opportunities for grants and low-interest loans. Our forefathers planned well for their time to provide water for their residents for the last 50 to 75 years. But the water plant's infrastructure has aged. It is our time to step to the plate and continue to work together to provide a water delivery infrastructure that expands our area and volume and ensures a safe, dependable, quality water for our residents, businesses for the next 50 to 75 years. In closing, I'd just like to say I played and coached a lot of sports over the years and learned there is no I in the word team. And to be successful, you have to all work together as a team. And then anything becomes possible. And we all become winners. The end result is how can we provide the best service to our tax-paying residents and businesses. A regional water system will make everyone a winner. Thanks for inviting me today, and at this time I'll take any questions along with AJ.
I have two questions. One, this may sound stupid, where does the water come from? Does it come from the lake? How is it then, that's the first question, and what is the opposition? If you all combine together and make it seems to me, pool your resources, you're going to save money. What's the number one opposition to this plan?
Well, personally, I think it's such a big change like anything. We've seen school mergers get voted down. People don't like change. They like the way things have been operating for years and years. But we're at a predicament right now in this whole northern area that it's time we need to make a change. And we all have to pull together and make this change together. Things aren't going to be the same as they used to be. I mean, the village of Brockton has wonderful water, but the cost just drove itself out of business, basically. And same with Fredonia. I mean, you know, right now with the two systems going, it relieves not having to upgrade the Dunkirk plant, and the Fredonia plant can produce the extra amount that needs to be done. So right now, that's the best alternative. And as far as the amount of water, the water will be coming from Lake Erie, which in our last meeting we had, the water treatment plant in Dunkirk can create 6.5 million gallons a day. They're permitted to withdraw 10 million gallons a day out of Lake Erie. The village of Fredonia currently is rated at 2.5 million gallons a day, and they're pulling out of their reservoir. So between those two sources of water, it's adequate for the present use and for additional businesses to come in to have that infrastructure. I know we've lost businesses coming into this area due to the fact that water line ain't sitting there with available water. And with this system, who knows what could happen? Genesee County brought in a big yogurt plant because they put a system like we're talking about in. So the economic, it's not only the water rate you got to look at, it's what economic impact this could do besides the water rate. Yes.
You know, part of the problem, I think, is like you said, setting the water rates and for, you know, each municipality, those that are creating the water and have those plants that they have to maintain, and, you know, and working that all. That's very, excuse me, that's very complicated. Now with Clark Patterson Lee, I think this is a settled question, but I'm not sure because it came up in a conversation just a few days ago with the county executive. And that was eventually going to Erie County and getting our water from them. Has that been settled? I mean, there's been a lot of things. Close the Fredonia plant, we all agree that's not a good idea. But then they talk again about potentially in the future going to Erie County.
Yeah, that was some confusion at the beginning. It was talked about, Erie County. Erie County can produce 90 million gallons a day, and they're pulling out of Lake Erie too. So I mean, they have the production there. The whole thought of Erie County was just for a backup system in case something drastically happened to the Dunkirk plant. We'd have the ability to at least pull water from that direction if needed. Yes.
I was part of that Chadwick Bay initiative very early on, and I remember statements made to the effect that in no way would our water system ever be a replica of Erie County water district.
No, that's correct.
Never. I mean, that was I don't know where this idea came from recently that might be a possibility, because it was we never wanted any part. The initial engineer from Wendell Duchère, who talked to us 10 years ago, said you never want a replica of the Erie County Water District. They have highly paid executives. It is politically driven. The executive gets appointed by whoever is in political power at the time. And at that point in time when we were talking about this, each municipality would have an equal voice in whatever happened in our North County Water District. And I'm hoping, since I'm out of the loop for the past year and a half, I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen.
Basically, the way it's being looked at right now, a board would be created, a nine-member board. Each community would have one representative. Dunkirk would have two, Fredonia would have two because they're the producers of the water. And that's the way it's looking, and it's a non-paid board. I mean, you know, it's not like what you're talking, that there was a whole new board and another layer of government that was making money, and yes.
But if you're saying that we're taking the water out of the Lake Erie, I want to know who is going to ensure that something doesn't happen to the water in Lake Erie. That happened, like, say, for instance, in Toledo, where they had no water because of all that pollution that went in there, and then it was going in. Who is looking out? Who is making regulations and making sure that they're being adhered to, so that we're not having?
That's a very good question, but you got to understand, if something happens to that lake, there's a lot of people in trouble. And Jack Gash can verify this. There are ways to treat algae water. It's just that situation that happened on the far end of Lake Erie is a very shallow part of the lake. And the algae problem, the treatment process can take care of algae, but it would have to be built on. And that's, isn't that right, Jack?
What happened in Toledo is probably could never happen here. I mean, there's relatively shallow water, relatively warm water, and in Toledo there's also a river that's carrying large quantities of phosphorus and nitrogen down to the lake. So there's a real potential there for this blue algae, so-called blue algae, to form. Here, here it's not gonna happen for a million years.
And that whole issue of phosphorus getting into the groundwater is being very looked at now by the DEC, and you read about Chautauqua Lake, and that's where all the algae's coming from. And it's the quick runoff. Now, the theory years ago was push that water down to the lake as fast as you can. Well, they found now, let's slow that water down and try to let the ground absorb some of that water instead of just pushing it right down, carrying all those phosphorus and things that causes algae to grow. So that whole theory has changed, and more the regulations on sewer treatment plants are getting stronger to take care of that problem too. So I think they're looking at that more and more.
I was wondering about the sizing of the main trunk and how much headroom we do have with the size of the pipe for growth before you start losing pressure and ability to supply.
That's the engineers are on board right now with the last grant we got, and now if we got to put a map plan in place, now the actual engineering is going to start being involved, and the size of the pipe that will be running, and that's all going to be determined to make sure that that piping is big enough for future growth. I mean, you sort of have to look at, it's going to be a big pipe around everybody, and everybody will attach to it. Like if the town of Portland attaches that pipe, now the town of Portland is responsible for anything beyond that pipe, but the regional system will be this big loop that everybody's attaching to.
And that size was what? I saw in the paper that I thought it was 16 inches or something for the main.
It's different in different areas.
I can let you know,
yeah.
in 2013, the city of Dunkirk took the main line on Route 5 from our water treatment plant to the city line, cleaned that out and relined it, and that was a 12-inch main.
And
But
now
from there,
they're,
we think they would all need to be
yeah.
updated if you kept going on 5.
So now they're talking, to get water to Brockton and Portland and west town of Dunkirk and Pomfret, they're talking to tying on where they clean that line out with a brand new line, and then also coming down Willow Road, attaching, so you get the supply of that large tower they just put up. And by that line being large enough, it basically eliminates that water tower in Portland.
I grew or lived in California where these pulp mills used like 6-foot supply lines, to in their industry, and just wondering what the calculations were as to the treatment is available to do so many million gallons, but as far as tapping off of that, what numbers have been crunched to, so let's say we have, with the 12-inch line, we have the capability to expand maybe 20% or 50% or 100% growth rate, but has anybody addressed that? Do you have those?
Well, they are designing this with large piping, and even at that, if the growth happened that much, you can still put a tower up and pump to that tower and then run off the tower. Basically, that's what we're doing with the city of Dunkirk right now. We have pumps right around Shorewood Country Club that pump to the tower in Portland because we can't get enough pressure from the city of Dunkirk right now to fill that tower without pumping. Now, so that's always a possibility. You can just put more towers and pumping stations in if need be. But this trunk line will be large enough to have that ability.
Are you shipping the water to Fredonia and then they treat it? Is shipping untreated water out and then the other municipalities would be treating it themselves?
No. Fredonia would treat the water and produce as much water as they can produce. The Village of Brockton's plant would be shut down. A pump station would push that water up and fill the big clear wells that are up there, and then it would work gravity back, and that's basically how the system would work. But you gotta make sure there's loops in a system so you don't have problems. So. Yes?
I thought I heard you say earlier that the city of Dunkirk and village of Fredonia would not be part of the district. That, I might have misunderstood, but that's what I thought you heard. And then I heard that as the district, they'll have more votes on the board. What guarantee, if they're not in the district, would there be for all the other district investment if all of a sudden those two rates go sky high? Or they look to that as a need because of other lost income to raise the water rates and everybody else. I don't understand why they're exempt from the district.
Great question. To me, that all would need to get worked out prior through the intermunicipal agreements. Those agreements would put the checks and balances in place and prevent the city or village from just raising rates for the sake of raising rates.
Why wouldn't we all pay the same rate? I just don't see it as a district. If each town has to cover the cost of repairs and the people in that town have to pay for them, it's not a district system. That is not at all. I don't care what you call it to get the initial lines in, but to me, we should be in it all for one and one for all.
And that would be
You know,
considered an authority in that case.
Again, I don't know what gets into an authority, but what is the possibility of the district developing their own water treatment plant, other than just the ones that aren't in the district? I don't understand. Does the district own the water district of Dunkirk or Fredonia, and so it's really not part of the district? Is that what you said?
No, the city and the village would be the suppliers to the district. We would retain our autonomy. We have a
Meaning
20.
what? You're not in with the rates or anything else?
Correct.
So
We
you're
would
not
have.
part of the district receiving
We would provide.
district water?
We would provide to the district.
It seems to me if you were providing the water to your own people, it would guarantee that our water in other districts was good and justly priced. I don't agree that it should be separate.
Again, though, that's what gets worked out through an intermunicipal agreement. The city has taken on a $20 million consent order project to even make the possibility of a district a possibility. So without that work, I don't even think we're having these discussions. Because you would need a main supplier of that water. If the district wanted to take that responsibility on themselves, then you get out of any possibility of this becoming a cost-effective reality.
Do either of the mayors have something to say to the rest of the group? It's your turn.
I know that this has been a major battle all the way through. Some of the points you're bringing up, excellent points to bring up. These are points that have been brought up over and over again that become little sticky points. I think from the beginning, I had my issues. Each community has their issues, and it's these issues that we've been fighting through. And what Mayor Dolce is saying right now, the intermunicipal agreements would be long-term agreements that would guarantee rates and things like that far into the future. You know, one of the things that, and this is kind of off topic, but I moved here from Eastern Kentucky. And in Eastern Kentucky, we lived in a place called Hogtown. And in the mornings, you had people that looked like they were in Palestine coming down to the well with their bucket, filling up their bucket from the pump, or going to the creek and pulling their water out of the creek directly. We're not a third world country here. And we should have potable water available for everyone in this community at their disposal. With good quality water along Route 5, what a great area for growth and potential. Good water going along Route 20 and Webster Road and Ellicott Road, what a great possibility for quality, you know, infrastructure. And industry, when they come into an area, and I know you talk about we didn't have the water available. That was poor foresight. Water could have been available. somebody didn't have the foresight to build where the water was or to connect to Jamestown to have the water there for the growth of that company. You know, one of the problems that we have right now as a water issue is Carriage House moving out. We're going to have excess water, and yet the place in Buckner, Kentucky, where they want to start producing the products, can't produce the water right now. So they're having a problem. They've extended their time here because they can't meet their obligations someplace else. Now, I don't know what's going to come out of that. That's not our decision to make. That's a corporate decision, and we have to live with that corporate decision. We can't dwell on the past, because I can think of issues that bothered me in the past, and I can keep harping over those, and it's not going to take us anywhere into the future. We need to work on what we can in the future. One of the first projects as a mayor that I saw on my table was the North End Water District for the town of Pomfret. They gave us a great footprint. Right now, our pipes are close to each other. From the town of Pomfret to Portland are close together, and they're at a high elevation, which leads to gravity feed. One of the things that's always been an issue to our trustees, and to me, will our reservoir be shut down if we become part of a regional water system? Do we lose our reservoir? According to the county executive, let's bake that in, that if the reservoir is ever shut down, it's a decision of the village board. And it's not going to be a regional decision.
What would be a problem with the reservoir being shut down if you have the district? I mean, do you need that reservoir if you got the lake? And I guess I'm not understanding that.
At this point right now, the city of Dunkirk's water plant cannot supply the required water without upgrading. So with the Fredonia Reservoir, there's adequate water. In the future, you don't know, but the foundation will be laid to make that decision.
That's clear, thanks.
And part of the contract would be that decision would be made by the people that would be impacted by it. Right.
I guess it's my turn. I want to go back to your question about another supplier coming in and providing water. We actually looked at that. The issue is it would never be viable without the population centers of Dunkirk and Fredonia. So, for instance, if we went up to the state park, put a new line out, and started a packaged plant to produce water, that's great, except we wouldn't have anybody to sell it to. So that's the issue. And as far as Brockton is concerned, we keep talking about bringing water to Brockton, but let's just be clear, it's not just the village. There are 4 Portland water districts that we provide, plus the prison. So when we bring water there, it's not just to the village. So the timing of closing Brockton, while it's never good to tell your public you're going to close the facility, all 3 of my long-time operators are in their 60s and will retire in 3 to 5 years. So that's a reasonable time period. If we do upgrade our project or our plant, which was built in the 1930s, we're looking at a $6 million upgrade. We only produce about 400,000 gallons of water a day. So we're talking 6.5 million, 2.5 million, 400,000 gallons. When I spend $6 million to produce 400,000, my cost per 1,000 gallons goes up. I calculated at least $1.50. Our current cost to produce the water is about $4.75. If we add $1.50 to it, we're going to be much higher than the regional system can provide it. Now, as Dan said, our water is excellent quality. It's as good as any that you're going to find in the county. But the plant is 80 years old. It needs upgrades. We have byproducts of producing the water. We use a chemical to make the dirt and algae settle out of the water when it first comes into the plant. That is such a active chemical that when it settles, now I end up with a couple of feet of sludge once a month that we have to wash out into basins. Fredonia is lucky that they can discharge that sludge into the creek. They have a permit from the state of New York. We don't. So I have 2 big ponds of sludge, which is an expense that we still haven't figured out how to properly dispose of it. So to close our plant is not the worst thing in the world. The one concern that we had is making sure that we had a redundant water source, because if all the water comes up Route 5 and something happens to that line, we don't have a source of water. So we are talking about, at this point at least, going up Walden Road, which would be the Pomfret line that's currently feeding on Route 20, going up Walden Road to Webster, and then down Webster to 380, which would match into our current line. So that's really where we are.
Yes.
I have another concern that follows along with Judy's question about water quality. I'm not talking about the algae, but you mentioned NRG. You feel it's an absolute necessity. I believe their presence is a necessity to the town of Dunkirk and the county in a whole, but they're one of the biggest producers of solar and wind out west. And it's a huge national energy corporation. Under the current plans, they are going to continue burning coal for the next 10 years. They're going to also start bringing in the natural gas. You're looking at a huge amount of waste and sludge. You know, it was sold to us, gas will be cleaner than coal. Don't bring in the coal, you know, from Pennsylvania, the energy produced by coal there. And yet, the way the current situation is, they are looking for permits in air quality and water quality changes. Their Huntley plant in Buffalo is now closed down. And yet, they're going to average their limits on pollution between the 2 plants, which means we could end up with twice as much pollution here. What happens if our water gets contaminated with too much saline or other? We have 2 coal ash landfills. You're talking about your sludge pond. There is a history of it having polluted, and one of the plants been closed down in under 30 years. The other current plant, the coal ash landfill in Pomfret, Portland, they're a danger, and there are ponds right there on the plant property. Now, are you testing the water to see if selenium is in them? I looked at one report, and most of the chemicals that I found with coal ash have not been tested for 20 years. Now, I'm not worried about algae. I'm worried about what are the carcinogens and heavy pollutants in our lake area. Who is going to test for the obvious possible pollution from natural gas with the methane and with the fossil fuels of coal?
I agree. We need to make tighter and tighter regulations on the whole testing procedure. I mean, let's face it, we have a lot of changes to make. I mean, NRG, I mean, grant you wind and solar can't produce all electricity, but we're our own worst enemies. Look at this room right now, the amount of lights that are burning during the day. I mean, is that really required? But everybody likes to flip that switch on and, you know, have those lights burning. And there's a byproduct from every time you produce electricity, other than wind and solar. But the regulations do have to get tighter and tighter, and I totally agree.
Has anybody looked into the water quality, which could be possibly? I'm very, very much strongly in favor of a district water supply. But I want it done correctly. I don't want it just diluted to a bigger community. If that water is bad, you dilute it out, because then, yeah, it's harder to test.
I'm not sure what they do test. Jack, do you know on the water part? I don't.
Coal ash related.
The water that comes out of the tap has been processed since it was pulled out of the lake. So whatever the quality of the water is in the lake, presumably the water that comes out of the tap has changed, right?
I don't know. I don't know what kind of.
Suggesting that the runoff of the power plant contaminates the water at the intake,
Yes.
which contaminates the water at the tap in your house.
Right. And I just want the water treatment center to just
first of all, these water treatment plants process the water and improve it. In terms of particulates and a variety of things. And then the other thing is that water plants are required to provide an annual report. And I think everybody who lives in Dunkirk and Fredonia receives a notice of that annual report being available once a year. That annual report is required by the EPA and includes quite a broad range of tests. Off the top of my head, I don't remember whether selenium was included in the testing or not. It probably is. But that testing regimen for the local two plants, as I recall, has been meeting the requirements, all the requirements of the EPA regulations since I've been around this community, so just 20 plus years. So the treatment plants actually do their job, and they actually produce good quality water. Bottled water isn't tested. There are no regulations. The drinking water that comes out of these plants is tested, and the local communities have been meeting the specs. So.
I had the opportunity to review one water report. I asked to see what was tested from the Dunkirk plant. And I was surprised when I compared it to the list of chemicals that I was familiar with coal ash pollution. Many of those things had not been tested for 20 years. So if there is somebody I can address even with my concerns as to, I think these things should be tested for, especially with NRG burning coal for 10 more years. There's no limit. They just won't burn both of them out of the same unit the same day, is my understanding. You know, that we have to watch what is happening to that lake. Appreciate that.
I believe NRG's latest proposal is 3 more years for using up the coal while they go through the conversion process. I believe 2017 is when they want to be a fully natural gas operating plant. But to go to your concern, as part of that $20 million consent order that the city is going through, extensive, expensive filter rehabilitation work has been taking place to treat chemicals such as the one that you've mentioned. So is it going to be perfect? No, nothing's perfect, but it'll be a lot more effective than our current treatment methods. Plus, the standards keep rising. We've had to farm out a lot more testing than we've done in years past as regulations have increased to deliver a quality product. As far as I can recall, we've never been cited for producing poor quality water.
I know our county executive, Vince, is very adamant to get this project moving and rolling, and he's met with, I know, the city and Fredonia and everyone, and I can't tell you the amount of time we've spent on this. I've heard comments, why'd you go with this engineering firm? I can't tell you the whole committee, how much time we took proposals, we analyzed what would be the best firm, and you know, we all decided Clark Patterson would be the best step at that point. That's who we picked, that's who we gotta stay with, you know. It's no different than building a house. Sometimes you build a house and you go, God, I wish I would have done this a little different, that a little different. But we can't go backwards. We've got to keep going frontwards. And that we have all the players in place. We're this close. We just got to get over that one last hump, and I think we can be there. And it's going to pay off for the future of the whole county, I believe. And this whole design was set up in a 2-stage process way back when the county did their, I got the numbers right here. Ripley's at that time had a $3 million they had to put into their water system. The village of Westfield, they're looking at $2.5 million. So down the road, if we get this one line in, we can start expanding if it's more feasible. Right now, if we had a line close to Forestville, they wouldn't be doing what they'd be doing in Forestville if they could hook to this line right now at a reasonable rate. The reason they couldn't hook to that line in Hanover is it's coming from Erie County, and Erie County charges too much for their water. So, I mean, that's the predicament we're in. But, so we got to move ahead with this. But I thank everyone and for listening, and encourage you to come to any more public meetings we might have on this. But thanks again.
In the fifth grade, in the